All right. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to today's Kaijunaut Variety Hour. Hopefully, we are going to be getting things rolling in a bit because today we have a few topics that I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring and talk about it live with you guys just to see if we can get any kind of conversation going because it's a hot topic that's been coming up, and I have been learning a few stuff regarding Godzilla Day for this year. Since I'm not sure if this particular piece of news is something that's been going around, but if anyone knows, last year there was the Godzilla Day uh, Godzilla store pop up shop that happened in the Little Tokyo area of LA. And as anyone knows me, I've mentioned that I do live in the LA area, so it was something that I did happen to do for a part-time job. And so we'll be discussing some stuff I've been hearing around since I am pretty friendly with the people who I worked with, and some of them do still work at that establishment. Like I said, there is a Godzilla store section of the Little Tokyo Anime Jungle store. So if you've ever been to that LA area in Little Tokyo, you'll know that there's this Anime Jungle store line of shops that they cater to any sort of Godzilla tokusatsu anime media there. So I did hear some stuff about that, so we'll be talking about that today. And then going over whatever stuff happens, I will probably be letting in a few people talk if there's anyone free from my friend group who wants to come in and chat. So we'll just be talking about that today. All right. And feel free to leave below if you have any thoughts on whether you prefer practical suits and effects versus CGI visuals. Hi. Hi there. Let's see. And then we may do a bit of a drawcast as well, or drawing on the side, depending on what we get going there, or if there's anyone who's willing to come in and chat. We'll probably do a bit of drawing on the side. Let's see. There you go. So I've invited my myriad of online friends there. And let's see. I'd probably have to plug in my also a new addition to the screen here. As you'll notice, I have my little logo up there since I just learned that StreamYard lets you put in your own logos there. So I got a little icon there on the corner for the Kaijunaut channel. Hello, everyone. Thanks for stopping by, giving me the views. Hopefully my setup is good for the... No, this setup's pretty nice, actually. So maybe I'll just do some drawing on the side here. So that way we can get the ball rolling. right. So, topics of today, again, are going to be some Godzilla Day news I've been hearing around and regarding the Little Tokyo LA event, as well as just the topic of practical still effects versus CGI. Um, if you haven't been around the recent Twitter scape, basically there has been recent uproars of discussions regarding the use of practical suits in Godzilla movies and other kaiju media in general. Essentially, the talk is of like whether or not we want to see practical suits over CGI models in our movies, just how they handle the effects overall. Because when it comes to what we've been seeing recently, all the new kaiju films tend to typically be portrayed through CGI. Because as we all know, it's relatively the safest way to go in regards to what people want in terms of like realism. So, like, some people would argue that you can get more from CGI because there's more ways to make it feel real in terms of how the monsters are portrayed on screen. There you go. So, for instance, you'll probably see people talking about how they feel that CGI gets the realism across better than a suit, whereas people who are into suits will typically argue for having the suits be more realistic because it's actually something physically there. And both sides of the argument I can really get behind because when it comes to just what I prefer seeing on screen, for me, it's always going to be suits, like people in suits, because I think the craftsmanships of the suits gets across better to the audience. And depending on how you see that argument, I think it's a matter of taste. Because when it comes to CGI, the realism thing I throw out the window because when it comes to the immersion of it all, like it just matters on how everything's portrayed because with CGI or suits, what you have to get across is like the character of the monsters. And so it'll probably be just always be a matter of how well you can portray the characters on screen. Because like if you were go to the suit route, the one thing I don't like about if you were to portray something in suits, the only thing I would want is just for the choreography and the effects to be relatively like well portrayed and like because any kaiju fight that you use in suits, you might fall into the trap of it coming down to like a slap fight or like an aggressive hugging match. Anyone who has talked with me on Twitter knows that I do not like when the choreography of a fight is them like just slapping each other or like aggressively hugging. Because I know in universe it's like effectively grappling, but because of how the suits are made or because of just how the scene is shot, it just looks like they're hugging each other aggressively. And so when it comes to suits, I always want it to be done with great choreography. A great example would be any of the Millennium or the Heisei era films because with those films, they had effects that lent well to some great choreography. And I know that most people remember the Heisei era for the beam battles, but if you watch any of the movies, especially some of the earlier ones, there's some great choreography in the action of the suit work there, and I think that they were able to do some cool stuff, especially in the Millennium era. Because if you look at the Millennium era, those are probably some of the best effects you'll see from Godzilla films. It can be hit or miss though, because a lot of them did rely on like um, compositing all those shots with the kaiju and stuff. So it's not a lot of miniature work, but whenever they do have miniature work in there, it's really stellar stuff to see. And so you'll have some great action scenes with the kaiju, whether it be the fights or just having the rampage scenes. Because, like I said, I want choreography and action that isn't just like slap fighting or like hugging. Like one of my favorite recent instances is if you watch any of the new shorts for the Godzilla Day anniversary streams, um, you'll be able to see that a lot of the choreography in that, depending on the short, it'll have some pretty good choreography. The standout for me is always just from recently viewing it, is the Jet Jaguar versus Godzilla fight short. That one has some pretty stellar choreography in it, and whenever I watched it, it was always just um, the feeling of having the actual suits there and the choreography style with it. It felt like an actual lived-in fight scene. So just the way they portrayed all of the actions in that fight really came across well. And so if you were to like watch, and the thing is, I would prefer that over CGI. Like that's my stance on it. If you can get a really good effect going with the CGI, it's cool. But if you can do the same thing with like a practical suit, I would go for the practical effects any day, because I just appreciate the art form of that more. And having talked to people who are in the industry and actual suit actors, you can tell there's a lot of work they put into it, and there's just a passion there. Because there's also the topic of like whether or not we should continue it at all, with regards to the feelings of the suit actors. Because there's a recent Firewood Media, if you watched his video, talking about CGI versus suit mation. One of the arguments he proposed is that it'd be better to stop it for the safety of the suit actors. And I took that as a way of like not giving them enough credit, because having talked to a lot of suit actors and um, like suit makers, the dangers of the suit are always taken into account. And more often than not, people know ahead of time what they're getting into, because like they don't do it. It's not like they just call you in for work and it's a job they give you. The suit actors are always actively going into it with a sense of passion and just like a love of the work and the art form. Because if you talk to any of these people, like there'll be horror stories, sure, but like it's always worth it in the end. I feel like is what comes across. I want to have like suit actors here for future streams, because I've had streams with Johnny Psycho, with Kurt Carley, and Lee Joyner, all people who work in suits or are actual suit actors. I would love to get them on here to discuss it for future reference, because I want to get their side of the story. Um, and such, because it is such a hot topic that I want a full scope of perspectives on it, because it's a very big part of the debate of suits versus CGI. And so, looking on it, let me see if I can. Let's see. So, for anyone wondering, I do have a little Godzilla going on here, because little Godzilla going on in the background. This is drawing, mostly waiting. But if I stop screen for a second, I'm gonna show what I mean when it comes to what I think make for great suit battles because I mentioned beforehand we had things such as the recent Jet Jaguar versus Godzilla, and look at that. Cool stuff like this is what I'm talking about when it comes to great suitmation action because you could do some cool choreography with this, and like there's just like awesome shots like these where like, and then if you take into account one of my favorite fights from the recent MonsterVerse films and Godzilla versus Kong, you have some cool stuff there too. But if I were given like both examples of these well-made fight scenes, I would pick the practical effects because I just it's a personal thing. I just think it looks cool. I think it is cooler than CGI. Um, and the only thing that I would prefer over the two would be 2D animation because I think there's a lot you can do with 2D animation. I've always been a proponent of 2D animation kaiju films because I think you can do a lot with that, and there's less limitations other than just creativity and like the workload. But I mean, you can. There is cool shots like this. Like this is from Godzilla versus Kong as well. And the thing is, when I watch something like Jet Jaguar versus Godzilla, the short, it reminds me of like this fight scene here where they're basically the same fights. And also if you think about like GXK, a lot of the fights in there were pretty stellar. Like the Wingard films are my favorite um, examples of just kaiju action and moments that I think were done really well. Uh, and I think you can do them just as well in summation as shorts like this one, I think, prove because you just have a lot of creative stuff you can do with suitmation, and the limitations often help you get more creative. And if you just have a good, I think with a good budget, like a big Hollywood budget that you see, and it may not even have to be that big, because if you look back at some of the work done for Godzilla '98, I'll just show that here. Like the miniature work in that film is just stellar because of how much work went into it. I mean, look at this shot here. This is one of my favorite shots for Godzilla '98, and this is a suit, by the way. Um, a lot of people don't know that with the '98 film is they did have an actual suit. Like I mentioned, I did interview Kurt Carley, who was the suit actor for Godzilla '98, and the miniature effects work in that film are stellar. And they had practical suits, they had all the baby suits, but I mean, if you just look at stuff like this, the suit work in there, even though it was mostly CGI, like the suit work there is just stellar. And like here's just a side by side of some of the older Showa stuff. But just if you had a budget like that, you can do a lot with it. Because like most films these days don't really implement miniatures. Like you'll have um, a few big name directors who still use it, like Christopher Nolan. I know he just allowed miniature work in his films. Like if he isn't doing it in real life, it's either miniatures or some out of the world CGI effects. But just looking at things like suitmation and the things you can do, like give this a Hollywood budget and you can do like a lot. Like there's this one clip, like 3 second clip from like the Snickers commercial, for Godzilla, and I think that's a great example of some great suitmation work and just comparing it to things like this. Because I love this. I love these fights. I love what you can do with CGI. But when it comes to just the the art forms, I just prefer suitmation because, for one thing, it's what I grew up on, and it is just an art form that I think is timeless because you can do any level of like suitmation work and you'll never be able to tell like from what time it could be because of just how you can present it. Like there's a lot more you can do nowadays, sure, but like limitation wise, I think there's a lot you can get away with a lot more than like probably CGI, because limitations with that is just how well you can render out everything, depending on what you want to go for. But if we're just talking about realism and like the realistic style of CGI, like photoreal stuff, and there's like even a spectrum on that, because depending on what you're going for, like you can have something like 2014 where the CGI in that is all relatively realistic, versus something like the Adam Wingard films, which are a bit more stylistic but are still supposed to be portraying real stuff. Because if you take into account just all of the work that goes into it, there is a lot of hard work, because that is something that has come up in the debates online, where you'll see people talking about which art form has more soul to it. And there's some people, proponents of the CGI side of the argument, who always go on about the work that goes into it. And there is a lot of hard work that goes into it. Like, look at any CGI visual effects heavy film. Um, you'll hear the stories of people being worked to the bone on that, or being overworked, underpaid, and such, which is like a tragedy. But like, uh, it's just this whole other thing of like, I got like some part of me wants to say like there's more put into the practical effects, because I mean any job where like you just have to really like you can just sit in a chair and like animate on screen. Um, any job that isn't that will have probably more soul into it when it comes to just art craft, because like there's always going to be a difference between me drawing my illustrations versus someone who does an actual clay model sculpture, because like I think there's a lot more work put into that, or at least a different kind of work put into it than like me just sitting here and drawing away. And there's challenges with both, but one might lend more leeway when it comes to limitations, because if you can work a way around it, I think you can come up with a lot of good stuff. And just with the advent of new technologies, I think both are going to have like very big changes. But I don't think Suitmation in any way should be left behind, or even just left behind to the low budget stuff, because for a period of time there's a lot of like underground indie films that use Suitmations, but there's like this reputation of cheapness, I think, that's been added to it because of it. So hopefully that reputation is like left in the dust, because when it comes to Suitmation, like there's also the thing of like how much it's gonna cost, because like the cost of like building everything out versus the cost of hiring the animators to and the visual effects people to do all that work. And I mean, look at all the stuff with Marvel. Like these days, a Marvel movie consists of like when it comes to making a Marvel movie, largely even without the pandemic stuff, we see it more. It's largely just people in a green room, and then everything gets added in layer. Maybe you'll have a few prop sets, but for the most part, like most of it consists of like people in green rooms doing stuff, and like a fix it and post attitude that you see in a lot of movies these days, like when it comes to Marvel films. And people are like clamoring for the old days of when you had like actual sets, actual costumes. Like the costumes aren't even fully done these days. You have like people in these like gray suits or these half baked suits that aren't the final designs, and you have the visual effects people working to the bone, um, figuring out the concepts. Like they'll be like mid production and still not have the concept for the suits, which is where you get that fix it and post attitude with it. And it's not something I want to see happen to like the MonsterVerse, for instance. Because if you see like even the latest films, like there's lots of set work, there's lots of cool on-set locations where they go to these places that take place in the movie, and um, there's actual stuff on screen. One aspect when it comes to this argument of CGI versus like suitmation one thing that I like more about the suitmation part of it is that when it comes to suitmation, this isn't even a debate on whether or not it's the realism, but it's just the fact that there's an actual thing there that I can physically see, I can physically touch, and I know is like in reality versus something that I'm only ever going to see through a screen. Because when it comes to like CG, like take a CGI model versus the suit of the monster, I'll be able to see that suit in person. I'll be able to, um, like, say if like parts of the suit ever go up for auction, I can physically own that. Versus a CG model, which I'll only ever really be able to see on screen. I'll only ever really be able to buy like a model, and even at that, it's more likely I'm just gonna get a copy of the model versus being able to own the suit. I'll be able to own either like a piece of the suit because I own pieces of the 98 animatronic, the 98 suits. I can say I own pieces of that. Versus, I don't think it's as impressive as like, oh, I own the model. And I'm like, sure, that's cool in many ways, but again, it's only ever something I'm going to see through a screen. Versus, I can see the effects, and if you pull them off well, they're stellar. And you can see that in, like I said, the examples of the recent Godzilla Day anniversary shorts that use suitmation. And I wish, I wish the Godzilla suit had some love thrown at it because it is a Final War stunt suit, and you can tell in a few places because you'll have the zipper for the suit um, showing, or you'll have like just the visual decay of the rubber suit because anyone who knows anything like that, you'll know that all the silicone, rubber, the foam, it degrades really easily, depending on how you can take care of it. But most of these suits are thrown in a warehouse and stuff, and barely ever shown for exhibition. But yeah, like I wish they had suits that were like really like upgraded, like the Gigan and Jet Jaguar suits. I know those guys had like crowdfunding to make new suits. And I think they're really good. I just wish the Godzilla suit had some love there known into it. Um, speaking of that, like if you look at any of like the suit, like amateur, I won't even say amateur because they're actually going and building these suits that are like near movie quality. Um, like just looking at someone like Kaiju Chris, who I've met on numerous occasions, and I've seen the suit in person. Like that just goes to show how awesome practical effects and suitmation is in the industry because like you can always just have something there, and the amount of work they put into both making it and wearing it, like there's just this huge level of appreciation and like admiration to the work that they put into it. Because like I've heard stories firsthand of like just the amount of work that goes into wearing the suit and moving around. Like if you watch like my Godzilla Day stream, I talk about how I got to talk with them on a few occasions and just the level of work put into it and the level of work they wanted. Um, like movie studios will be more observant of the limitations because there's like contracts and stipulations and like just rules that go into it. And like the metro company, it was a collaboration between like whoever runs like the events of the Little Tokyo district and the metro station. Like they did a collaboration, and you can see there like the metro people wanted him to walk from like the station to the Little Tokyo Mall area, and it was just not feasible because like in under 30 minutes like he'll be at risk of overheating and such. And so you have that dilemma of like, but most of these people know the limitations going in. They'll know when to put their foot down and like say no, this isn't feasible, or I know my limits. So like unless the studio is really strict, which like honestly at that point like this is the studio's fault. Um, because I feel like people like in the Firewood Media video, I feel like he like what's the word, like coddled coddled them too much, like treated them like as they didn't have any agency in the matter, because these people will know their limits and they will be able to like put their foot down and know what they can do, what's feasible, what's not. And so they'll just be able to know like suit actors will know their limits and they'll know like when to stop because there are horror stories that come with suitmation and the art form because these days it is an art form. Like it's no longer just the technique, it's an art form. Like most people who work on it are artists and they are people with a dedication to creating monsters. So it's not just like a technique that one technique is better than the other. It's just which art form do we want to use, which art form do people prefer. And I think there's a place in the world for both of them because I think the best way you can do a modern suitmation film is with the help of CGI to rough out the edges and rough out everything. Because even in modern movies, like if you look at something like the Suicide Squad that had that moment with Starro, um, and when like Polka Dot Man saw it as his mom, like that's a pretty good use of what I assume they probably green screened the actress in. But like if you just took a suit, like like they could have used a suit for Starro, that would have been really cool to see because I think you could have done a lot with that. Um, just combining the art forms in a way to where, because the one thing I hate is when something practical is augmented too much with CGI. For example, even though I personally really like the movie, The Thing from 2011, I believe, like seeing all the practical work that was done for it and just how it was like completely overwritten with CGI. And it's a thing in Marvel too, where you'll have a cool looking suit or prop, and it's just switched out for something in CGI in post. Like that thing I do hate. Um, so I would hate for like a cool animatronic or a cool suit to be overwritten completely. Like sure, some slight augmentations, like just to make things look cleaner or to make it feel more lived in. But I would not want to see it completely overwritten with CGI just because I just hate that. Like even the CGI is top notch on the suit, to where you couldn't tell. I kind of hate that you can't tell if a practical effect is overwritten with CGI because I just hate having the ambiguity of like just not knowing. Like I like knowing if something is practical. I like knowing if something is CGI. I hate having like this weird indistinguishable method where a practical effect is completely overridden by CGI. And because like part of me would prefer if something is either just CGI or um, a practical effect. Because I mean, with the 2011 The Thing film, at least there the CGI is like overall decent. Um, like the only thing I think people were really picky with that is the fact that you can tell it was CGI. And when you put it next to the like practical effects work for the movie, like you can see just how well those practical effects hold up and how awesome the practical effects for the 2011 thing looked. If you look at any of those behind the scenes, you'll see the practical effects in those films are just like super awesome, And I say that like without any like loss for words because like that's just what it is to me. It's awesome to see these effects. It's awesome to see um, how cool these things are, and I can feel the same way towards a cool CGI fight. Like I do not knock the CGI of even the Wingard films, even if they are um, in some ways subpar. In other ways, they excel, and it's probably the best of what we've seen in the MonsterVerse. But in other ways, you'll have moments where the CGI isn't as rendered really well, or the textures are off, like misplaced, or presented in a way to where it doesn't look like the best. But like I think a lot of that stuff is awesome. I love the dynamic camera movements of the Wingard films, the awesome choreography and such. But if you put that next to something like I said, that's Suitmation and it's done just as well, I prefer the Suitmation. And like I said, it's just a matter of taste. And I think a lot of people go into it fighting over like, oh, what has more soul put into it, or what has more effort and whatnot. And it's just a matter of taste, like I said. And so, like, that's what my overall thoughts on it. Hopefully we'll have some more discussions going on. That way I can just get the vibe of everything going on. And then we can jump into the next topic I'll discuss. Because like I said, there was some stuff I heard to where essentially, if anyone happened to go to the event for the Godzilla Day anniversary pop-up event, because that thing happened for a little over 2 weeks. It was like from the 2nd to the 17th. So in that like few week period, that's when they were celebrating the Godzilla Day. And actually I heard that they're actually going to extend it to the whole month. So there's more time for the event to go on, because it is happening this year again. And they were talking about it to people. So the Godzilla Day anniversary pop-up event for Little Tokyo is going to be extended to the whole month of November. And as well as it seems they're planning on doing it every year from now on. So every year there's going to be an event there where they'll have a pop-up shop for the foreseeable future, which is what my coworkers told me. That's what they basically plan to do. And they even at the time of the event, they were talking about possible movies for doing screenings. I think I even talked about on my Godzilla because I think there should be a big I don't want to say uproar, but a vocal announcement of what films we want to see for events like this. Like, what would you prefer? Showa movies, Heisei, Millennium. Keep in mind that there's a lot of right stuff going on, but be very vocal about what Godzilla movies you think would do well for screenings and events like these, because people who would do that do want to know, like, oh, what's the best outcome you're going to get from these screenings, because it's just a matter of like what do these people want to see from, or what do you want to see from these guys, because they do put in a lot of work to plan these events. There's a lot of stuff going on. So be very vocal about what you want to see, and just what you want to see from these people, because they do listen. They are part of the community. The people I worked with were all Godzilla fans. They all love the series, the franchise. So be very vocal about what you want to see, and they will listen. So, like, that's my Godzilla news. I don't know if they've made any announcements or anything or such. I haven't seen anything personally, but just from what they were saying, it wasn't even like a secret thing too, I feel, because they were telling everybody, any customers who came in to the shop, like, oh, we're planning on doing it like year round, as in like every year they're going to plan to do it, and that it's going to be extended to the whole month rather than just a short period of time. So because it was a really fun event, and I'll see if I have anything in terms of images, because I thought I had images of the event I could pop up, just because there was a lot of stuff that was shown off, because it was a really fun event to both see and work at, because like just being able to meet all those folks and all those people, it was just really fun. Where's all my stuff? Well, either way, because like I said, it's just a matter of letting the people know like what you want. Like be very vocal because they do pay attention. And if you just talk to people, like, because I also got to meet a lot of Toho people, and like I said, if anyone's in the know, because there were pictures of myself and my coworkers taken by Toho people. So if anyone knows any Toho people, let them know that they want to see pictures from the Godzilla Day pop-up event, because for anyone who doesn't know, I worked that event, like I said, and our pictures were taken. There's a ton of stuff shown. They did do some publicity, but it was mostly Kaiju Chris's stuff when he did the photo shoots. But there were pictures of me and my coworkers taken, and I would love to see those shown. I would love to have those, just because it was a fun event, and I got to meet so many cool people through that. Um, and as I said, they are going to do the Godzilla event every year for the foreseeable future, and it will be extended to the whole month of November instead of like a short week period, because the event did start from the first, I think, 2nd of November through the 17th, so that it was celebrated on Godzilla Day, which was the November 3rd. Uh, and they had a huge screening for that. I believe it was just on the first day. I'm not sure if they did anything for the actual Godzilla Day. But I also wish they did more stuff throughout, because they only ever did anything for the first days, and then everything else was just like it was like a normal shop where you did some stuff. And we got our first guest on. What is up, Minecraft World?
Heyo! Hey everyone, for those who are watching. Yeah.
Hey, welcome on. How have things been?
50-50. Physically doing fine, mentally working on that.
Well, hope things look up, and hopefully we're gonna have a good time here. We had, or I have been talking about, essentially the recent debates I've been seeing going on online regarding the topic of suitmation versus CGI, and just how
Yeah.
people perceive the art forms. So now that you're here, if you just want to give your take on it, like what do you prefer, suitmation versus CGI, and like what you think of the discussions going on.
I'll start with the discussions because that leads to my point on preference. Um, the discussion wise, I think it's just fruitless because all of this comes down. Like, yes, CGI can achieve things that Suitmation can't, but also Suitmation, in a way, grounds the story and gives it a far more human platitude. While yes, CGI could do just that, it's debatably not as effective. I say debatably because yes, CGI can can do similar things to Suitmation and vice versa. But in terms of like which one's better, CGI objectively is better, but whether or not it
Mm.
but you can still have their pitfalls. They both have their stellar moments and their pitfalls. For every Gamera 3 or Gamera 2 or even GMK, you have Yongari, you have trying to think of some other. You have Raiga. You have so many other bad Suitmation movies that look visually well. Okay, Raiga isn't bad visually, but story wise, it's just bad. But like Yongari, you have frick. I'm trying to remember. I think King Kong Escapes would probably be one that well, that's 50-50, but still. And for CGI, for every Pacific Rim or G14, you have Reptilian, you have D War, and so
Mm.
many others. So they, while CGI can actively do things more than what Suitmation has, they both have their pitfalls and both can be messed up in very similar ways, as shown. Granted, now does that affect the quality of the stories? Debatably, I
Mm-hmm.
would still, I would still say the Gamera films. I'd still say the first three Gamera films, despite not being the best from a visual standpoint, are actually quite good in terms of writing. Um,
Yeah.
and for my personal preference, I don't care. I personally, I would like to see more 2D or 3D animated kaiju, like fully 3D animated kaiju, akin to Godzilla the series or Ultraman Rising.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of that, please.
Yeah, I'm in somewhat of the same boat. Like I've said beforehand, that I personally like if you show me the best examples of like suitmation or CGI like kaiju stuff, I'll tend to go towards the suitmation just because I think it looks cooler.
Yeah,
Like like beforehand, I compared the Godzilla versus Jet Jaguar anniversary short against like Godzilla versus Kong, like the Hong Kong battle scenes. Like to
yeah,
me, essentially those are like the same. They're essentially the same kind of fight, and I think they're both really well done. But I would pick Godzilla versus Jet Jaguar because I think it does a lot of cool stuff with the suitmation um, technique, or the art form, as I like to call it.
yeah. Yeah, for me, I was more so comparing, like, I was more so comparing the CG Gamera short from 2015 to those, despite the massive, and I do mean massive tonal dissonance. Visually, I think they're both incredibly spectacular and both very much suit the kinds of tones that you're going for. If you're going for like a parody or high octane story, then suits. Go ahead. Those that leads into the campiness, and hey, you can still make the story effective. Whereas if you want to try to take it more seriously, especially nowadays, maybe CGI could work. Now, granted, you could do the same for both, but you could do the opposites for both, but still.
Yeah, like there is a lot of stuff you can do. Like I feel like you can either have, because I mean, if you take something like Gamera 3, for instance, that one has pretty dark moments, pretty like moody set pieces. Like if you look at any scene from like the final fights in the airport, like
Yeah,
when they have Iris and
yeah,
Gamera in the rain and fire all around it, and you compare it to like the Gamera short from like
yeah,
2016, or
or
you
even
mentioned.
minus one, or even Godzilla minus
Yeah,
one, which is almost exactly the same tonally.
yeah. So like you can have either technique, and you can do really well with whatever mood you want to go for. Um,
Hmm.
and like
It's all about it's all about direction. A
yeah,
good director can make a film. A good director can make a film about a talking, or can make a film about an orange rolling down the street, or just an orange interesting.
yeah, and that is a very good point for either or, because if you take like Godzilla minus one, like the reason I think they pulled off the CGI so well in that film is because the director was a visual effects director as well, so he knew what he was
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, for me, it's just like, can we have more kaiju media like Ultraman Rising, Gamera Rebirth, or the Gemstone shorts, please? Because those
Yeah,
were good too. Those were
yeah, I
really
feel like
good too.
yeah, they were really good. I feel like for animation, it is an untapped well for the most part, because
Oh, very much.
you can do a lot of cool with it. Like even in like there's like a mini debate there too of whether or not we want like 3D or 2D. I'm always in the camp of 2D just because, again, similar to the debate of like suitmation versus CGI, I prefer 2D animation because I think it looks cooler. Um,
I mean,
but I don't
I'd
knock
settle
3D.
for a Spider Verse esque hybrid if I could, but
Yeah, like
2D would
hybrid
be
stuff
neat.
is yeah, hybrid stuff is always like a cool middle ground, because like you can also have suitmation with like 3D or like the CG augmentations to help it fit better. Or you can have like
Yeah.
2D and 3D augmentations and such.
Yeah.
One actually cool example. Have you watched any of like the recent like Dragon Ball movies? Like, are you into Dragon Ball?
I am not as much into Dragon Ball. I've not watched the recent Dragon Ball movies, but I have seen clips of them.
Have you seen any of the clips of like from Dragon Ball, the superhero movie that came out like a few years ago?
I have seen a few. Most of the clips that I've seen are from the Broly movie.
Well, I would recommend looking into the clips of the superhero movie because that one has specifically the fight between Piccolo and Cell Max, because that film is a 3D 2D blend. It's
Mhm.
done by the studio who did the recent like the Dragon Ball video games as well. And though that fight, because essentially um, Cell Max is like kaiju sized in that film, and then Piccolo has the power to grow big. So partway through that fight, it essentially becomes a kaiju battle, and it is beautifully animated, I must say.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Nice.
so
I'll look
having
into it.
yeah, I recommend looking into it. It's a good movie
Yeah.
overall too. Um, but yeah, like it is an untapped well.
Yeah. 'Cause, like, you got things like pretty much every single fight scene in Ultraman Rising and Gamera Rebirth. Like, one of the biggest praises for Gamera Rebirth when it first released was the fight sequences themselves, and I'd still say they're the absolute highlights of each episode.
Yeah,
Even with, even with how good the character writing gets later.
like I think the writing for that show and the kaiju fights are like the best parts of it. Um, because the way it handles the kaiju fights, I think they're just like really well
Yeah.
choreographed and animated.
Yeah.
I think choreography is a really important thing, like whether you're talking animation or suitmation and the like. Like having good choreography goes back into the directing of it too.
Yeah.
Because I've been rewatching some of the Gamera fights and episodes recently as well, and
Are you planning to
the
do a
kaiju fights
marathon
are
for
just
the
awesome.
60th anniversary? Or
I might do that because I have been wanting to rewatch the like the Heisei movies in full. I
okay.
actually rewatched the original film recently,
Oh, okay.
so
If
I
you
might
do
give those
decide
a
to do
try.
so, just letting you know, all of them are on Tubi. Well, all except versus Jiger are on Tubi for free, and versus Jiger is on Pluto and Plex TV. Though it's the English dub, sadly.
Mm,
Yeesh. But yeah, and but if you don't want to contend with the English dub and have access to it, all of them are on Amazon Prime, or if you have the
mm.
DVD sets. So
Yeah, that's good to know. I might go for some of the movies. I might check out Tubi and such. I do have Amazon Prime, so I know some of
yeah.
them are on there.
2B is the Japanese version, and just
Hmm.
the superior version in every way, shape, and or form. Good God.
Yeah, yeah. I do thankfully have the Blu-ray set for the Heisei trilogy, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Okay. Yeah. Um. But yeah, Gamma Rebirth is one of the biggest examples. Another one I talked about Lego Monkey Kid in the Condom debate, but another one that I thought of was Gurren Lagann. Because
Hmm.
I know it's not kaiju, it's mecha, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Gurren Lagann is like one of my personal favorite animes. It's one I grew up on a lot,
Yeah,
so I know what you're talking about when you're talking about that.
yeah, I need to show it to my friends because we watched Lego Monkey Kid a couple months ago and they absolutely loved it, and that show was an inspiration, and Gurren Lagann was an inspiration for that show. So yeah,
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of that with like there's just like I don't know what it is, but it's like this little subgenre or this like sub niche of animated projects that include things like Lego Monkey Kid, and then other ones are like Rise, right? Obviously, have you seen or heard of Glitch Text?
I have not seen it, but I know of it.
Yeah, I would recommend giving that a look if you like the either because I know you really like Lego Monkey Kid. I would recommend giving it a look, because it is like that little like sub niche of just like this weird spot for 2D animation that is awesome and just love to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hmm.
but yeah, like you can absolute 2D and 3D animation. Like I don't care which one, but those are absolutely an untapped well of kaiju, like for both Eastern and Western animation. There is a good reason Attack on Titan took off. I'll just say
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, even that one throughout its history, it changed up its animation a little bit because even without like the whole studio change, like you had in the beginning for the most part, everything was mostly like 2D, and then you had like 2D 3D mixes in the later seasons, which I think really show how well the medium can portray like kaiju fights and like just these giant monsters going at it. Um, it's just awesome to see.
Hmm. Yeah,
Hmm.
like Ultraman Rising is another example that I think of. That's just one of the most visually one of the most visually stellar kaiju movies in recent memory. It's just God. Say what you will about the art style, but God damn it, that movie was so much fun.
Yeah, when it comes to the art style, I think there's a lot of cool stuff with it. Artistically speaking, it's not my cup of tea personally for like some of the proportions and designs. Like I think Demular looks like a little weird in the face personally. Not that I think it's a bad design, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it actually lends well to like the action you see in that film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially that finale. Good God. But
Hmm.
yeah, That's pretty much my stance on the Suitmation CGI debate. I think it's a pointless debate. Give me more animated kaiju properties. I want
Yeah,
more of Gamera Rebirth, please.
yeah. Like, there still hasn't been any news on that, huh?
I'm still waiting. I don't, and I'm kind of worried, considering what this year is.
Yeah, like I've been seeing that trend going on with like projects like that, to where there's little to no news on like what's happening next. Because like also, granted, animation itself is a medium in which there's going to be a lot of room in between like any projects because of the amount of work that goes into any form of animation, really. Um, but like take that opposed to things like Invincible, like there's like a lot of news that happens in between like seasons of Invisible, because like for the most part, I know that show's had like a season like pretty much every year. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like hopefully we see news because I know there's a Skull Island anime, which I know as much as a reputation that has, we haven't heard anything. Um, and even in animation alone, like there's just a lot we haven't really heard about when it comes to several animated projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any thoughts on like what you would want to hear or like just about the lack of news?
Ah, personal feeling, bring him back to the big screen, damn it. I want to see another Gamera movie. I would take a season 2 of Rebirth, but if I had my way, Gamera would come back to the big screen. Like
Hmm.
get a western film in the West. Not exactly a MonsterVerse movie. I'm kind of iffy on introducing Gamera to the MonsterVerse personally, because there are a lot of things that you would need to change to make him fit that. Like you can make him work, but I have yet to like the closest one to really convince me on the idea was ZG's concept, and that was
Mm.
a very radical departure in origin for him. Um,
Yeah.
and I understand that if you're introducing someone like Gamera, especially considering Godzilla already fills the same role, albeit from a far less hyper specific and and far more neutral perspective, debatably. Um, there are obviously going to be contentions with how you handle it. We'll see.
Yeah.
But personally speaking, let Gamera have his own time to shine before you cross over with Godzilla or do anything with
Mm.
that.
Yeah. Like what would you want? Like okay, so either if you want to bring him back to the West, like per se, like would you want like even with like say not a MonsterVerse film, like would you want Legendary to take the rights, or would you want to see like another studio have the Gamma rights and just see how that?
Honestly, honestly, I would like DreamWorks to give it a shot.
Hmm. DreamWorks, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, and you
maybe
would want it to be like given with them, like you want it to be like an animated project too.
yes, because yes, if I had my
Mm-hmm.
way, I would love if I. My hope is I would love the director of How to Train Your Dragon or The Wild Robot to do it because
Mm.
Gamera perfectly suits that. That or Guillermo del Toro gives it a shot.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think like, I would love to see something like Guillermo del Toro doing. Ooh, because I would want to see an animated project from him. Because then you mentioned Chris Sanders, I believe, who directed what he directed. I think he directed. Yeah, he directed Wild Robot. He also did Lilo and Stitch. Um, I'm a big fan of his, so I would love to see like a collaboration between those guys. I think that could make something really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, Del Toro doing a Gamera movie, I just think would be considering what he did with Pacific Rim and what he did with Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Though if I really wanted to be ambitious, give it to Leica. Jesus.
Oh yeah.
The guys
Actually,
behind
speaking of
Kubo,
like a,
the guys behind Kubo and the two strings. Oh,
have you ever watched like Frankenweenie?
yes.
Because Gamera's in
Wait,
that movie.
wait. No, I haven't, but I know that Gamera was in that movie. Sorry,
Yeah.
I got it confused with Corpse Bride. That one I have seen.
Uh,
Sorry.
but yeah, Gamera
Uh,
made a cameo in well, quote unquote Gamera. But it is a giant turtle, and it is stop motion too. So
yeah, but yeah. Um, a part of me also hopes that Zim does a Gamera pitch at some point because I have ideas.
yeah,
Ooh boy,
I
that'd be
remember.
fun. Plus,
I
it's
forget if
Finn.
this was what it probably was before you came into the Zimiverse, but I think we did do a Gamera stream once, and we all I
Yeah,
think it was
yeah.
mostly Gamera design.
I was looking through Zim's catalog. It was a Gamera stream discussing Rebirth's announcement.
Yeah, I think it was also like either it was part of that video or there was a whole video where we basically pitched out like Gamera designs and stuff. I think also a little bit of like just the stories we would tell. Hopefully he does another one of those because I know we've done a few of the Godzilla pitch streams. So I'm sure like if you just like mention it to Zim, we can probably plan one out.
Yeah, I brought it up sidewise when I showed my own Gamera design earlier yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So, but honest to God, I would love to do that. I I think this year is the perfect chance to do so. His
Mm-hmm.
60th birthday. Why not?
Yeah, and when is that happening? Like,
It's November 27th.
oh,
Yeah. So a couple, I think it's like 2 weeks after Godzilla's. 3 weeks
yeah,
after Godzilla's. So, yeah.
yeah. That's interesting because as I don't know if you read into anything I mentioned beforehand, but having like connections to the people in Little Tokyo who did the Godzilla Day event, they're going to be extending the Godzilla Day pop up shop to the whole month, from what I hear, and
Ooh.
it is also going to be a year round, like every year for the foreseeable future. They're going to do a Godzilla event in Little Tokyo, in
Nice.
LA. So if you're ever visiting LA at the time, that's something you can plan for.
Yeah, I'm currently in San Francisco, but I might go down to LA at some point. Um, or yeah, wait, is it down or up? I don't know, but I might go to LA at some point and check it out uh, in November if I got the chance.
Yeah, I recommend it because it was a fun thing. Like both going to it and working there. Like there's like this like it's basically like a small convention because there's a lot of traction with it. And like just this big like portion of fans that come through. And I actually got to meet like several like YouTubers because I met Mike's Monsters, I met Kaiju Chris who did the Fusion Goji suit. Uh, so people like that always come through, and it's like awesome to see.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, like what do you think in terms of Godzilla films? Do you think the fandom would um, like things are more popular with regards to films that they would want to see screened at events?
GMK is definitely one of them. Like that
Mm-hmm.
movie is a fan favorite for a goddamn reason. So GMK absolutely. At events, so this is just going across the entire catalog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 54. Definitely. I think 54 would be one. Um, for the fandom as a whole, I those are the first two that come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Minus one's been screened a lot, but I'd imagine more people would want that. Same as Shin. Um, maybe Final Wars, probably. Probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Those are just off the top
GMK
of my head.
and Final Wars were both names I threw out to the people who were organizing the stuff. Because um, I got to talk with the people, and they were mentioning they wanted to do more screenings and stuff, and they were asking me things like, "Oh, what do you think the fans would want to see?" And like, GMK was definitely a name I threw out there. Final Wars as well. Um, like the only debacle would be like the rights to screen the films, and like they just have to pick the right ones to really to get the biggest turnout.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope. I'm gonna go. I need to eat dinner, so
All right, nah, no problem. Thank you for coming on. Feel free to show anything out before you go.
uh Project Nemesis essay. Go watch it. Look out for that. It's just a Nemesis character study. I'm working on that. Same with my GXK sequel pitch. I'm taking a short break from both though, because I would like to focus on my mental health and I have schoolwork happening, so there's that. But yeah. And find me on Instagram, Kara, Blue Sky, all those fun places. Bye. Take care. Take not deserve
Awesome.
better.
Take care, man.
Bye.
All right. Big thanks to Minecraft Raw for coming on again. Um, so yeah, I think there's one perspective you have when it comes to the whole, both the debates on like Mason versus CGI, as well as the untapped well of kaiju animation. Because as I've stated before on previous streams, animation, as I said, is an untapped well for potential. Many examples include, Gamma Rebirth. Those had some pretty cool fight scenes in them. I mostly only watch it for the fight scenes and some of the characters too. The animation on that is when it comes to the people, anyways. The kaiju stuff is super stellar. Things like I mentioned, if you watch Dragon Ball Super Superheroes, there is some awesome animation in that when it comes to the final fight, especially because it's essentially midway through it becomes like a kaiju battle, with Cell Max being like basically like a small kaiju and Piccolo being able to grow to like even like they're essentially Skull Island proportioned um, kaiju. If you watch Cell Max versus Orange Piccolo, that is essentially a kaiju battle there. So, like I said, an untapped well for potential when it comes to kaiju and animation. Um, there are things like the Godzilla anime, Singular Point. That one, like I said, I love all the things with the kaiju, and I like certain characters, but the writing at some points gets a little too sci-fi heavy. Um, Specifically, it's just I feel like it expects people to understand the complex mechanics of it all, because I feel like there's easier ways to explain certain mechanics or concepts. But given it was written by an actual like scientist, yeah, I believe he's an actual scientist, or at least he's like studied it a lot. Um, but it is coming from someone who knows their stuff. So, depending on if you know anything regarding the topics he does, like it's hit or miss on what you think would be if it's like a writing style that's for you. But the kaiju fights in those scenes are also very stellar. I think Gamma Rebirth did the better job of it, just because it's a lot more rambunctious, I guess, or it ups the ante in a ways that it's just super cool to see. There you go. That was our first guest. Hopefully, we can get more people on. Or we're already going in at an hour 10, so maybe we'll end it in a few. But for the most part, let's see. Maybe I'll continue on drawing here. That way, we just have something to play over the stream. So we'll do a little drawing. I'll do a quick sketch here. So I'll just bring that up now. Again, let me know down below if you have any thoughts regarding the debate of CGI versus suitmation. Which style do you prefer? Do you want the awesome practical effects of a Godzilla suit, or the incredible CGI realism of a computer animated fight scene? Let me know below what your thoughts are on it, because that is the topic for the night. Just an overall discussion of what's to come, because it is a hot topic debate going on online again. And as Minecraft Bro said, he isn't really all for the discussion because he thinks there's like better things to talk about or something. He doesn't really have a preference either way. But here we are. Because again, like I've said, I will always take suitmation and practical effects over CGI. I think it's just a cooler art form of the two. I recognize both have incredible work going into it. It's just a matter of what the outcomes of that work you prefer. Because I think that, like, if you take something like CGI, for the most part, you're sort of just sitting in a room, and you're sitting in a room and animating away like I am. Like, I would never say I work harder than the people who actually build out and sculpt statues and such. Because I think that the work anyone does in any physical medium should be recognized as like super duper hard work. So like, just comment down below like what are your preferences and like, because there's obviously a lot of different opinions going on, but I think it should only ever come down to like, oh, what do you prefer? What do you like more? And why do you like this more? I like it more because I just like the idea of having something physically there that I can see, that I could hold and touch if I so ever got the opportunity to, versus something that I'll only ever have to see through my screen. As mentioned before, I'm only ever going to see it through a computer or a TV screen, whereas I can go to the studio set and see a Godzilla suit. I can see a miniature set. I can see Godzilla because he's real. I can't say that for like 2014. He'll only ever be on TV unless someone builds a suit, and then I'll love the suit. But like Godzilla the model, I'm not ever gonna see that really, other than the big screen, which is cool. But I want to see Godzilla, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Godzilla. Animation, however, is really cool because it looks cooler than a practical thing because it's a cool image. I just like it more. Big legs. Big legs Godzilla. Big Mac. Alright. Oh, just a quick Godzilla sketch, and we'll probably call it a night. If anyone has any thoughts, we'll hear you out. I think the important thing to know is that whenever it comes to any topic, like I said, whenever it comes to anything that comes down to preference, you should always be civil about it. I gotta tell you how annoying it is that people block you over opinions of a fictional, character, because I think it's like super petty in a way to have to ruin friendships over fictional things. And of course, there can be certain fictional elements of stuff that warrants disagreeing over, that can warrant disagreements of like morality. Because I mean, if you're a fan of it just depends on what the thing is. Because you could be a fan of Darth Vader, and I'm like, cool, but it's a fictional villain, so what's the point? Versus if you like Hitler, come on now, there's no way. There's nothing to be said. So we are out of Nutella. You heard it here first, folks. It's Gojira. I smell food. So I'll probably call it a night here. That's some detail. Just want to say big thank you for everyone who tuned in. Big thank you again to Minecraft World for joining me. Go check out his stuff. He's a really cool guy. If anyone who might want to join in on stuff like this, I'll always post invites through Discord. I don't have anything of my own yet per se, but I know I am on the Zimzilla Discord, and I know that's an invite to anyone there. So if you want to come through there, you can always find me there too. I do also have commissions open if you want illustrations, much like this one here. I do commissions for character, creature design, or illustrations. So if you're liking what you see here, I do better, more detailed illustrations. You can find me over on Twitter or X as Vic's Monstrosity or Vic Monstrous. You can find me as your Crispy Vic on Instagram, where I post a lot of my art there as well. I do have the YouTube here, Kaijunaut, where you can find more streams like this. You can find more drawcasts, more Let's Builds. I did discover recently, I did promise you guys I'm going to try to get the Godzilla model kit there. I did find it. I haven't gotten it yet, but I do know where I can get one. So you might see that in the upcoming future, hopefully. You can support me through Ko-fi if you want me to buy it. Support me through there. You get access to stuff. I do have a monthly tier. If you'd like to support me, you do get monthly illustrations, access to suggestions that I will take and put in the catalog of things to draw. So there's lots of avenues where you can support me, and in return, you get awesome art of characters, your favorite characters. I'll draw your favorite character right here with Godzilla if you want. So give it a look, check it out, share. Any amount of support I appreciate. And we have Godzilla. My dog is acting rowdy. It's time for dinner. So thank you, everyone who joined in. Thank you again to Minecraft World for joining. I will see you all in the next stream or video. Until then, have a good one, Kaiju Seekers. Until next time. Bye-bye.